Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of Transformational Astrology. I'm Henry Seltzer, and we want to talk about this eclipse that's coming up pretty soon here, next Tuesday, which is October 25th, and it's part of the Scorpio season eclipses. The first one is a new moon, and the second one is a full moon, and the full moon is a real doozy, as we say, on November 8th. So we've been talking about this for a while. I have other astrologers, you may have heard about this. I want to kind of illuminate some things about it and just caution that it's a really intense time that is coming up now. And that is something that we really have to be very aware of. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the first chart, which is the new moon chart. And that's not it. And here is the new moon chart. So the first thing you might want to notice about this, the eclipse itself takes place at 2 degrees of Scorpio, and it is a partial solar eclipse. You can tell by how close the node is, and the nodal axis is here at 13, so it's not that close, but it's close enough to be a partial eclipse. And this is really a harbinger of things to come. This next lunation cycle of 30 days includes that full moon in the following 2 weeks after the initial time. And this is very interesting configuration, though, this October 25th on Tuesday, happening very early in the morning, at 4 o'clock, about 4 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast. So getting close to 7 o'clock on the East Coast of America, and then it would be later in the European time, of course. And the thing about this eclipse is it's 2 degrees of Scorpio, and Venus is right there. And Venus will eventually be the ruler of the opposite sign of Taurus, you see, where the full moon eclipse takes place. And that full moon eclipse, just to give you a little preview, would look like this. And look at these big red lines in the TimePassages software. Basically, the eclipse degree, which the sun is at 16 degrees of Scorpio, is exactly, and the moon is at 16 degrees of Taurus, is exactly the same degree, not the same minute, as Uranus, and there's the square to Saturn. So this Uranus-Saturn square, which has been prominent a couple of years back, I mean, it was kind of the hallmark of the 2021 year, and then also 2022, and then fading now, but it comes back because of the retrograde motion. Saturn was also retrograde until recently. So this is just kind of the last hurrah. It's a 2-degree orb to this square, but it's very much triggered by this full moon eclipse. So, and this happens to be election day, November 8th. So here in the U.S. we have the midterm elections, and they are going to be incredibly important, incredibly fraught elections. If you haven't gotten the memo, it's a really, really important time to vote, no matter what your persuasion, no matter what you're standing for, because it's about even between Republicans and Democrats, and it's a lot of consequence depending on who wins control of the houses of Congress, the Senate, and the House. So anyway, that's political, and I'm not going to go into that, but we do want to just talk about personally what it's like to have this incredible collision of energies that's coming up, with also Mars now in retrograde motion at 25 degrees of the sign of Gemini, which corresponds very closely, although not a square or a trine, but an inconjunct, 150-degree aspect to the Pluto degree at 26 degrees of Capricorn. So, there just is a lot, and then that Pluto degree is in the Tsquare, also this Tsquare, which is Eris at 24 degrees of Aries is perfectly square. And then it used to be a lot closer, but now Haumea is getting a little bit away from a perfect opposition, 5 degrees and more. But it is very close to the square to Pluto. So Haumea is very close square. Also, Eris is a very close square. And this means that there's a lot of societal change going on, which we can see all around us. So let's go back to the new moon. That's what's coming up in 2 weeks. The new moon takes place on Tuesday the 25th, and it will be a doozy of a new moon as well, because not only are these things lurking, this square between Uranus and Saturn is still very close here. It's really only about a little bit over a degree off here. And that square is triggered to some extent by Mercury here at 22 degrees of Libra, so making a trine to the Saturn, therefore, kind of bringing this in. This Saturn-Uranus, again, Saturn is about being a little more conservative about the way you do things. It could be politically conservative. Uranus is about going for it. It's about breaking with tradition. It's about innovation. It's about going for new things. And both of these are motivating all of us right now in different ways. And we're kind of trying to suss it out and find the balance point, because we want to jump into the new, but we want to also be careful not to jump too far too fast. So we have to both be cautious and be aware of existing structure, being aware of tradition and the past. We don't want to maybe lose track of that, but the other question is, can we innovate, or where is it appropriate to innovate, as we really try to solve the mystery of our own lives, as we try to really figure out why we're here, what we're up to. We're not here just to make a buck. We're not here for whatever other purposes surround us. There's the consensus realities screaming at us in different ways. We should do this or we should do that. We're here for ourselves. We're here to find out what really we stand for, each one of us individually stands for. And that's the message of Eris, which is a feminine warrior energy, which is very prominent in these configurations also. I was just mentioning it. Opposite, kind of vaguely opposite to Haumea, 29 degrees now of Libra, 24 degrees of Aries, but the square is pretty close to Pluto at 26. And it's a pretty close square also between the 29 degree mark, which is beyond 26. So it's kind of coming from either side at Pluto. And Pluto, Pluto is Pluto. Pluto is transformation. Pluto is what you cannot get past. And, they say that Pluto can be the wrecking ball when we're trying to figure out how to make, it depends on your homework, as they say. If you've been doing your homework, if you've been really keeping track of yourself, if you've been really kind of trying to see the changes that you're in the midst of, because that's what life is, change. We go through changes. And if we're afraid to make the change, that's when Pluto becomes more and more insistent. The message will repeat. And so we eventually get it, and we know what our higher self is trying to tell us, and we go for it. And it's just, you have to keep nimble. I mean, it's like a dance. You have to keep moving. You can't just stop there. The music keeps going. And so it's very important that we have a good feeling about this. Not get caught up in, gee, this is seemingly an impossible challenge. The pressure is so much, I don't know what to do. Just try to resolve it by going inside yourself and finding your own internal place of calm and compassionate response. And somebody might be upset, but just say, try not to be upset. Try to just recognize that change is happening, that if it's a difficult time, it'll be a great lesson if we can absorb the lesson, if we can pay attention to the lesson. If it's a better time, then we can ride high and enjoy ourselves. But there's nothing wrong with having a little hardship thrown at you, really. And so that is something that we should be aware of as we go through these times, these tough kind of eclipse and all these transformational energies. Times, this has been talked about as a very strong eclipse season. And they say eclipses last for a period of time beyond just the lunation cycle that they accompany. So they say, look to 6 months till the next eclipse season. And that, to me, that means that at least through the end of the year, November 8th is the really strong full moon eclipse that's coming in 2 weeks after this, on November 8th. And, it doesn't last just until the end of this particular cycle, which would be December, but rather, it wouldn't be December, would it be? It would be November. The next new moon is November, sometime around November 24th, something like that. But what's happening is, beyond this lunation cycle of 30 days, it really does last longer. And I think when we see the vast divisions in this country that we're trying to resolve, the midterms is going to be a step toward trying to resolve it. I don't know if it's going to be a step that exacerbates things or a step that tries to resolve it, but we are in the balance point of our own lives in the same way, trying to resolve what the changes of these intense times are bringing to us, and trying to see where we fit in, how we can manage it, how we can do the best we can for people around us, for people in desperation because of war situation like Ukraine, or because of poverty situation like some places in this country. Whatever it is, or anywhere in the world, whatever it is that we're dealing with, just try our best to do the right thing. And that's what Haumea is all about. Haumea is a recognition that we are part of a bigger picture that doesn't even stop at the human race, but includes the entire planet. We are part of a planetary alignment of ongoing transformation as a culture, as a globe, as an earthly environment. We have to have an earthly environment that supports life. Spaceship Earth, there is no planet B. So this is a very important time for all of these things, and the recognition of our connection to the Earth is what Haumea seems to be all about from my research. It's one of these new dwarf planets that are actually just as much planets as Pluto. Pluto is considered in that same category of a KBO object, which is also a planetary object, and officially designated as a planet now, besides Pluto, are Eris, Haumea, and Makemake. So I've been concentrating on those, and they're very interesting. Definitely bring an earth energy, an earth understanding, a profound connection to nature, connection to natural law, to right action and right relationship, to truth-telling. Very important truth-telling. Try to be honest, and try to be where you can be proud of what you've accomplished, where you can pass on to the next generation the best that you can offer, because that's what it's all about. It's not about making money, right? So that's what we have to get through our heads as a culture, and it's kind of a slow slog right now. Makemake is also connection to nature and connection to earth activism and connection to social activism. So it's an activist planet, and it does sponsor action, taking some steps, action. Haumea, not so much action, more recognition, more the awareness of that connection to the earth, to nature, that's so important. And these are prominent right now. In this new moon, Haumea is only 3 degrees away from the sun and moon. So that's another factor that many astrologers won't recognize as yet, but it is a powerful factor in these times where we're trying to recognize which end is up and what the culture is about and where we're headed. So that's a lot of it. Now, another thing that is happening, though, is this position of Mars at 25 degrees of Gemini is where it's going to be. It just I can right-click on it in TimePassages software, and it says where the next retrograde takes place on the 30th of October. So in between these two lunations, the new moon eclipse of October 25th and the full moon 2 weeks later, on November 8th. And this position where it does station is 25 degrees 36. So it goes basically, oops, I didn't mean to do that. It goes another 10 minutes of a degree before it stops. So this whole time it's very close, very close alignment. It's an inconjunct with Pluto. So think about that for a minute. I mean, do we need any more intensity in this picture? But here we have Mars, stationary still, almost the same degree as Pluto. They stay the same. They're in actual contraparallel alignment as well. So, which is half a degree off right now. So basically, it's just we're in for it. We have a very intense situation coming up here between, especially when we consider the November 8th eclipse, which I'll go back to again one last time. And just to mention, this incredibly strong Tsquare involving Sun opposite Moon, Sun conjunct Mercury at 15 degrees 52 minutes, so only 10 minutes of a degree away from the eclipsed Sun. And that Sun opposite the Moon, same degree as Uranus, Uranus square to Saturn. So Tsquare involving Uranus and Saturn in square. Again, it is innovation versus tradition, staying the course, keeping still about it, not going too far too fast. And we have to balance both. It's not a question of how can we get rid of everything and just forge ahead. There is a necessity for innovation, I believe, in order to get ourselves out of, what Einstein said is you can't get yourself out of a problem with the same assumptions that got you into it. So we do need new assumptions. We do need breakthrough. We need new ways to see things. We need innovative ideas. They're trying innovative ideas all over the place. In Ukraine, for example, trying to push off the aggression, not be authoritarian. And we have our own issues with authoritarianism that we're dealing with in this country because that's the nature of humanity, that we have to deal with these things. You know, there are people trying to do things that are not for the best. And we just have to work as best we can with the situation, just being very aware that it is an intense time and everything we do matters. You know, it's look and pay attention and consider and do the right thing according to your own inner lights, just as Eris, feminine warrior for spiritual or soul intention, tells us to do. We have to find our own deepest principles and stick by them, stand up for them, have courage. You know, we only go around once in this particular lifetime, in this particular body, in this particular ego, and we have to make the most of it and do the best we can. So that's the message. Same message. The message doesn't change. I'll transition back. But it is important, as I close, that we recognize that we are in the soup. We're up against it. It doesn't get better. It's been intense this whole year and more intense lately, and it doesn't get better through the end of the year, through into the next few months of 2023 now. But, you know, we just keep on keeping on, and just having the faith that the universe has our back is so important. Just recognizing that it's part of a bigger pattern. It's not just our own little worries. There's a pattern of evolution, personal evolution, evolution of the culture itself. So that's what we have to keep in mind as we forge ahead. And the best of luck with that. Okay, farewell, friends. Talk to you soon.